Hey, welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk about something that I've seen a lot about on the internet and on TikTok and different places like that. So what we're going to talk about today is going to be charging time. So how long do I spend charging my Tesla, sitting there waiting for the car to charge, in comparison to what a gasoline car would do sitting there filling up? So I did have to pull some statistics from Teslify that's been tracking my Model 3 since I've owned it. And doing that, I was able to pull all of my supercharging logs. It gives you time, the amount of kilowatt hours that you put into the battery, how many, what the average time over, like if you charge at the same spot over and over again. It gives you the total time of charging since logging the car. And then I had to pull some information from the internet for gasoline cars, and we'll talk about all that. So let's get into all this information about charging time. As you can see here are my logs from Teslify on my charging sessions for the superchargers. As you can see, I've got a lot of supercharger different locations here listed, and you can sort this easily for average time of charging at that location. You can see that the max time that I sat at a charger ever was about 40 minutes, right? That was most likely, and I think I remember these charging sessions actually based on where they're at. They were on trips, and it was where my trip charging stop happened to land at a food time, whether that's lunch, whatever, or dinner, whatever it is. And so I actually pulled in at a low state of charge. I charged up while I got something to eat. Went and grabbed food and came back. So those are the high numbers. And then there's low times that are all the way low down to like 2 to 3 minutes. Some of those are where I just needed a quick little charge to get myself home. I didn't actually need more than that. It would get me home, would say 5 or 10%, and I charged for 2 to 3 minutes at a very low state of charge, and it gave me enough to get home. But the average time was 16 minutes. So my average time spent at a supercharger throughout 5 years since 2019. It was actually October of 2019, so we are a couple of months early from 5 years. But 16 minutes average total charging time. We did a lot of road trips. We put 81,000 miles on this car. So the statistics we're going to be going by is my time supercharging over 81,000 miles in 5 years in the Tesla Model 3 all-wheel drive. So total time spent over those 5 years actually sitting and waiting, which, like I said, some of those times would have been eating, not necessarily waiting to charge. I was letting the car charge probably further than it needed to be to get to where I went. As you can see, my average charge time is only 16 minutes. That's about the time it takes you to go into somewhere, grab something to drink, use the bathroom, and come back, and your car is almost charged. So most of these times, I wasn't actually sitting there waiting on my car. I rarely ever sit in my car while I charge. I'm usually doing something, and it's close to done by the time I get done. But we're going to count these times. 18 hours and 53 minutes, which comes out to be roughly 1,133 minutes of actual charging time. So let's compare that to a gasoline vehicle. So I did this in 2 steps. I did this with a Toyota Camry, a 2022 model year. I believe it is the 4-cylinder variant, so that it's actually probably the more fuel efficient one, which means it will have probably a little bit of a mid-size tank. We've got a tank size on the Camry of 15.8 gallons. It gets a fuel economy of 34 gallons per minute. Okay, and we basically said after 81,000 miles, we would use approximately 2,382 gallons of fuel, which would result in roughly 150.7, call it 151, stops at the gas station. How many minutes is that? So what I did is I went online and I Googled what's the average time for stopping at a gas station and filling up. The average time is actually 2 to 3 minutes. So I used 2.5 minutes for my time to fill up the car. Now, you know as well as I know that when you go to stop and get gas, it is sometimes 2.5 minutes, and sometimes it's much longer. If you go inside and get something to drink, you have to go inside and pay for the gas. You stop and get a car wash after your gas. You have to use the bathroom. When you fill up for gas, you're not supposed to leave the gas pump while it is filling. So usually you would spend that 2.5 minutes filling up, and then you would go inside and do these things because you can't do them at the same time. So most often it is more. But we're going to do the data at 2.5 minutes for filling up a fuel tank. That gives us a total time fueling for the Toyota Camry of 376 minutes. Yeah, so roughly 1/3 of the time spent charging over 81,000 miles, assuming you only fill up your gas tank at 2.5 minutes. Now, I did play around with the numbers, and we can easily actually change this to be, let's just say it took you 5 minutes in the store after you charged, or after you filled up your fuel tank. That's going to be 7.5 minutes. So let's change that to 7.5 minutes per stop. That automatically bumps up the total time spent fueling up your Toyota Camry at a gas station and doing everything else of 1,130 minutes. So now you are at the exact same time I have actually spent charging my Tesla as superchargers. All the other times that I charge my car is at home while I sleep at nighttime. I'm definitely not waiting at that point, right? So we're not counting any of that. We're talking about only superchargers, and theoretically, we aren't actually waiting on it to charge. So these are the numbers. So I can easily spend more time, reality-wise, fueling my Toyota Camry over 81,000 miles than I do actually spend waiting on my car to charge. All right, now I did the number also for a F-150, America's favorite vehicle, right? So I did this based off of the 2023 F-150, which they seem to all come with a 26-gallon fuel tank. That's good for the less times fueling up. I saw that you can get all the way down to like a 22-gallon and all the way up to a 36-gallon. So I did 26 because that seemed to be the pretty common fuel tank for the 2023 F-150 model year. And it gets a fuel mileage of 23 miles to the gallon. That's better than any pickup truck that I ever had, but I understand that I think the EcoBoost gets a lot better. Obviously, if you have a V8, you're not getting 23 miles to the gallon. You're getting closer. I think they can actually get somewhere around 17, but and which is pretty impressive because V8s used to be like 10 miles to the gallon, 90 miles to the gallon pretty regularly. So we're talking about a very fuel efficient vehicles here. All right, so at 23 miles per gallon, 26-gallon tank, 81,000 miles, we're going to use a total of 3,521 gallons of fuel. The number of refueling stops is 135, actually less than the Camry. You would fuel up less than the Camry with the F-150. So that comes out to 338 minutes. So the story is the same as the Camry story. It's about 1/4. This is closer to 1/4 than 1/3. Charging the Tesla at superchargers. But then again, just like I said, we changed that 2.5 minutes per fueling to 7.5 minutes. And boom, we are at 1,015 minutes, which is 100 minutes less than what I've spent charging this car in the last 81,000 miles of superchargers. So what is the conclusion to this? Well, if we looking at the hard numbers, it shows that you will spend less time filling up your gasoline vehicle than you will likely use supercharging your EV. Now, obviously, these numbers can change drastically. So the scenarios of them changing drastically are going to be the how often you road trip with your EV. Because with the gasoline car, filling up at the gas station is the same of what you're doing whether you are at home driving around town or if you are road tripping. The only difference is you're going to have less fuel efficiency or fuel economy at highway speeds. So that actually hurts a little bit on the charging for superchargers because you only charge at superchargers when you are traveling long distance. Typically, like I said, I charge at home, so on a regular basis. So that's, free charging that I don't have to spend any time on. The other caveats to this, though, is how often you road trip. So that means you're going to supercharge more, which means you're going to be spending more time at superchargers. Or if you charge less, obviously that would drop down a lot. So that number can change a whole lot. That just happens to be my particular data that I do. We take about 2 vacations a year, and we typically travel long distance for work or family, we'll say once a month to twice a month. So I would say that that is a pretty average traveling schedule for most Americans. Some are much more, some are much less. But to me, that seems to be a good balance, in my opinion. And some of those trips were very long distance trips. The other thing that is going to really change that is going to be the fuel economy of the gasoline vehicles and the fuel tanks. If you're driving a 2008 Chevy Silverado, that's a V8, you're getting 10 miles to the gallon. They also typically came with a smaller fuel tank. That means you are fueling up more often, you are spending more time. But if you get, say, I've seen where some of these trucks and cars can get 500, 600 miles of range. You're going to be fueling up much less because you got a very large gas tank and you're getting good fuel economy. So the newer gasoline cars will sit less at gas stations. So the numbers are the numbers, but I think this represents a fairly fair look at it, that EVs and people driving electric vehicles are not spending as much time as you think they are sitting waiting on charging. The fact is, people that drive EVs very rarely are sitting waiting on their EVs to charge. Most of the time, like you saw in my average time spent charging, we're sitting there for 10 to 15 minutes wanting to charge if we're actually are stopping to charge and then go again. And usually it's after driving for 2.5, 3 hours. And so we stop, we plug in, we go inside to wherever we're plugged in at. We usually will use the restroom, we'll get something to drink, maybe a snack at a gas station or something like that. Maybe something at fast food or a deli, whatever's around. There usually is something around. And then we go back to the car after that. And by the time we get to the car, most time, there's usually, because that takes about 10 minutes, there's usually about 5 minutes left of charging to get you into a spot that you are good. You can oftentimes go ahead and leave right then if you really want to. But that means you will probably have to charge again at some point, either in your trip or while you're at the location you're at if you're not going home. So, that's 5 minutes. That's enough time for you to basically open up your drink, look at where you're going, maybe open up your snack, have a couple pieces of snack, and then you're leaving. So your stop is not chaotic. It's much more relaxed, but it still does not take up a lot of time. We're not talking about a lot of time here. And in reality, we're talking about 5 more minutes maybe per stop when you do stop, and you're only stopping when you're on road trips. Other than that, 9 times out of 10, you are plugging in when you go home like you do your cell phone. You forget about it the next morning, you unplug it, and you drive off. And you got a full 80% battery. So I just wanted to make this video and kind of go through that. Doing some of this data made me realize that I kind of want to look at the emissions of some of this data. Now we can look at how many gallons gasoline cars are. We know how many CO2 emissions come out of that compared to, say, our EVs. So we're going to do some videos on that, I think, later. Hope you liked this video. If you did, hit that like button. It helps the channel out a lot. And subscribe. It's free to you to subscribe. It does not cost you anything. All it does is it really helps my channel out, and it helps you be able to see when I come out with new videos. And if you got any questions, even commenting in the bottom of this, it's really helpful. Another thing is, if you are looking at getting a Tesla right now in August of 2024, you can save $1,000 off of your order if you use the link in the description down below. It's my referral link. I get $500. I can refer up to 10 times, and you will save $1,000. So yeah, please use that link if you're thinking about ordering a Tesla, and we will see you on the next video.